So good morning, friends. And just grateful to be here this morning. And so much going on in the life of the church and in ministry. Yesterday, our diocese elected our next bishop, Susan Brown Snook. So she'll be joining us in June as our next bishop, God willing. People consenting. And then we're here on Super Bowl weekend. So I'll save the Patriots stuff for when we get into the sanctuary at 10:15. Yeah, it's okay. You know, once you won a few, whatever, you know. Anyways, all good. And so on Super Bowl Sunday, we often try to have a forum and a dialogue that offers some relevance to our faith journey, to personal fitness, and to our sense of citizenship. That is citizenship to God and citizenship to our country. And that blend is unique. And so in past years, we've had forums on, today is the highest rate of women being abused by men in our country, the next 24 hours. All the hotlines are just packed, and the ERs get filled up later tonight and tomorrow morning. And so it's a very violent day for women, for example. And that's just become part of the U.S. culture around Super Bowl Sunday. And so we had talks on that in the past. This year, my son Marcos was playing flag football at school with his buddy Spence, and they were running around, and a bunch of other parents were watching like we do, being faithful parents that we are, and we're chit-chatting about the whole thing. I noticed his dad over there. He looks pretty intense, and yet he's pretty mellow at the same time. I've never seen that in a dad before. It's either intense or you're mellow. There's really nothing in the middle. And then it took a few games to spark up a conversation and with his family and come to know more about them. And came to realize that Jason and his family have a high commitment to faith. They go to Lutheran Church in the city, but also a sense of commitment to youth and their growth and their faith and their body health and their citizenship. And I said, hey Jason, would you come to church and just lead a conversation about that? And then he caught my attention because he's an entrepreneur, so he's got like 4 things going on at once, and I was like, that's my cup of tea. I like that. That's awesome. So Jason, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure. It's great to be here. I'm going to. I'm not tech savvy, but we're going to get something started in just a second here too. Before I do that, as Pastor Mark said, I'm passionate about this fusion of things here, and what I'm going to talk about today is going to be a hodgepodge out of the fire hydrant. The way I like to speak is just the Holy Spirit's going to drive what comes out of my mouth over the next 30 minutes as I've prepared about 12 pages of things that I'd like to articulate. And as I'm sure as a pastor delivering a sermon or homily, you go through the same challenges of, okay, what do we need to say here to pack a punch? And for me, it's all about action. So we can sit here and we can consume information and we can be warm this morning. I'll contrast that with my experience last night in the rain in a second. But ultimately, I want to deliver nuggets to you that you can take and pass on to sons, grandsons, granddaughters, siblings, people in the community, because I do believe that the convergence of these topics is of grave importance at this particular time in our culture and our country. Just a little background, just to give you a context. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but I came to school here in 1990. Went to Point Loma Nazarene University, played baseball there, and that's where I met my wife, Kirsten. And this July, we'll celebrate 25 years of marriage.
Amen.
Amen to that, for sure. And then I have 2 sons. Jackson is in the back corner there. Jackson's 17. He's a junior at Poway High School. And Spencer is 12. He's a 6th grader with Marcos at St. Michael's. So a lot of the passion and the drive and the conviction that I have and that I want to communicate to you all this morning comes from that little nucleus right there. First of all, my responsibility as a man, as a father and a husband, to protect and to prepare my kids to go be strong young warriors for Christ out in the big bad world. But then my passion internally is as a coach. So when I take that, which is my life, and I go coach other young men and young ladies to pursue the same elements of greatness that I aspire to within my own family, it spills over into these other dimensions where sports and competition becomes a means to an end. It is not the end in and of itself, which is a completely opposite message you're going to hear today when you've got one of the greatest entertainment events of the entire year happening around a sport. Sport became entertainment. It's not for me, it's the cultivation of our identities in Christ and what God has created us and designed us to be. So at the end of the day, I do know firsthand and believe that our physical fitness precedes our mental resiliency, our spiritual health. All of these things converge. We're not meant to be compartmentalized as humans. And then the last kind of note on my personal life, a lot of my energy and emotion around this too is just from personal experience. I was an obese teenager. It's a little hard for people to understand that. When I graduated from high school, I was 230 pounds. I was fat. I was raised a pastor's kid, pretty poor, eating youth group, fun night food my entire upbringing. As you can imagine, popcorn and Cheetos and lots of soda pop and just bad stuff. So I was athletically gifted, so I got to go play baseball in college. But I go to college as a freshman, I weigh 230 pounds. I played, but they said, hey, this isn't going to work anymore. You need to do something about this, or your scholarship here, your life here is over.
Going all the way back to the Greek era.
So one of my first defining marks in this space is that between my freshman and sophomore years of college, I lost 50 pounds in 3 months, 2.5 months. I did it all on my sort of own initiative by starving myself, running myself into the ground. And that was sort of my first fanaticism with physical fitness and the change that it brought about in my life. So I go back to college. I leave college in June at 230. I come back middle of August at 180. None of my clothes fit. People didn't recognize me. Within a couple months, I meet my wife. Probably never would have been able to do that prior to that point in time. So that was a big defining moment in my life. Second big defining moment in my life in this context was that my mom, at age 58, was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And at age 58, you shouldn't be losing your mind and forgetting things. And long story short, she passed away at age 63, so it was a short life. It was very aggressive, difficult part of my life. Some of the greatest joyous moments of my life also came out of the last couple of months of her life. Being able to feed my mom, hearing her say I love you when she wasn't speaking to anybody else, my really special things. But that took me on a journey to learn as much as I could about the brain, because I was concerned that this is something that I needed to be worried about. And when you start getting into the brain and you start seeing God's design for humans, the options become limitless. Right? And we are just scratching the surface in terms of what's capable as humans, and perhaps even going the other way when we're the most technologically advanced society of all of humanity, and yet we are sicker, more depressed, more overweight, more unhealthy. Number one cause of death between 25 and 34-year-olds, suicide. So you get the mental health thing going on there. So we got to do something about all that. So this is where a lot of my passion comes from. It's from personal experience, hard personal experience. It's being in the trenches, firsthand doing this myself. And I will apologize now. I'll probably say things that offend. So we're all Christians here, so you have to extend me grace. I do the same thing. I reciprocate really well sometimes, except for my sons. It's tough stuff.
We're doing confession about.
Oh, I'll be there.
We're all good.
I'll be there. The proud moment this morning actually, and let's kind of dovetail into what it's all about really, is we communicated to the boys we're going to a different church than we normally go to on Sunday morning. And Spencer's first thing that he said to my wife was, are we going to be able to take communion? And when a 12-year-old young boy about to become a man says that, I'm like, okay, that was a proud moment. I wasn't even involved in the room, but that's what I'm talking about, that whole convergence of all these elements. Okay? So that's who I am. I'm 47 years old. I'm an old guy. But I live my life like a young guy. Last night, so I'm also besides the training center and working with young athletes, I am the head strength and conditioning coach for San Diego Legion, which is our professional rugby team here in San Diego. And last night, we beat the Major League Rugby defending champions Seattle in the rain at USD last night. It was wet, cold, miserable. One of those epic battles of men just smashing men, guys dropping like flies, and we come out a few points ahead at the end. It was a really special experience, actually. It was a great experience. So before we go any further, I want to play a short video clip, and then we'll dive into this.
Of what it took to move the body well. Without, like they had a classical sense going all the way back to the Greek era of what it took to move the body well without injury, with mastery of movement and control.
Those of us who remember John Kennedy, he affected our lives dramatically. He had a vigor, he had a youth, he had an energy. He took La Sierra High School and made that the poster child of his program to make America a healthy place. Because he understood that if America was healthy, physically healthy, it would be mentally, spiritually, emotionally, patriotically healthy.
I welcome this opportunity to speak to the people of America about a subject which I believe to be most important, and that is the subject of physical fitness. And I speak not only as President of the United States, but also as a parent of 2 children who I hope will grow up with those qualities of vigor and energy which we identify with the best of America. This should be a matter of concern to us all. A country is as strong really as its citizens. And I think that mental and physical health, mental and physical vigor go hand in hand.
Ready up! Last next hook. 5 sets, start on ready.
I hope that we will not find a day in the United States when all of us are spectators except for a few who are out on the field. I hope all Americans will be on the field. This is a subject which should be of interest to us all.
It is possible for young men to achieve difficult physical feats if they're motivated in the right direction.
And I hope when we have seen the astonishing results which we have seen, where we've been able in the short space of 2 and 3 months to change the physical habits and strength of our children, that this will spread to every school district in the United States. All of us will participate, and in so doing, we'll be better citizens and happier ones. This is a challenge for us all. Children, boys and girls, college students, mothers and fathers, and all of us, I think, should welcome it. I hope all of you will join in a great national effort to build a strong and better America through physical effort, through the contributions we can make by the drive and force we bring to our daily lives. Thank you.
Has anybody seen that before?
No.
So we're living in a much different era. So 1962, and there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things that have happened, obviously, and some of you are better poised to address. I was born in 1972, so 10 years removed from that point in time. Obviously, President Kennedy's plans didn't last very long because he was only alive for another year. And about that time, that high school PE program started getting shut down because we're entering the Vietnam era, peace, love, anti-war. That looks very militant. We're getting these young men ready for battle, which Laprati, the PE instructor, came out of West Point's PE program. Things that worked historically, all of a sudden we're deeming no longer necessary. But if you're sometimes you watch that video for the first time, you get enamored by these young men who, by the way, there is no high school student around that looks like that anymore. And this is part of the big problem here. But if you listen to his words, he's talking about the importance of these things for the health and the life of our nation. And I completely, wholeheartedly agree with that. But the programs get canned. PE programs start to change. The presidential fitness standards start to wane. We fast forward to where we live right now, and physical education in our school system is gone. It's gone. There's none of that going on. As a result, we don't produce young men who look like that or have those physical capabilities. So as a performance coach, this is a bit of a problem because what we end up doing is become rehabilitation agents. By the time they get to us at 13, 14, 15, because they played one sport in their entire life. They've never done any of this. They have no background in physical education. They don't eat real food. They stay up all night playing Fortnite. They do stupid things on their phones. They're weak. They're broken. And that's not just physically. That's mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. They're not at church. They're not at church with their families. So it's a big conundrum. And it's got ripple implications to what Pastor Mark was saying. Why is there rampant abuse on Super Bowl Sunday? Because you have a lot of boys who have never grown up to become men. We have perpetual adolescence regardless of your age. You have dads that are staying up at 11 o'clock midnight playing Fortnite with their friends, acting the same way that they're tolerating out of their young boys. So for me, in my life, I've said, no way. This can't happen anymore. And we're going to do things differently. But as you can imagine, in a generation of young people who are weak already, who don't have any energy because they don't eat well, they don't sleep well, and they're being raised by parents who baby the heck out of them, when they show up at a performance center where it's going to be physically demanding, we're going to push them to their breaking point. We're going to expect that they eat real food like meat and potatoes and nuts and avocados, and that they trash the phone in favor of reading books and getting a good night's sleep, that's not really a popular message. So our business over the last several years, from a business standpoint, has declined each year. It's just a slow, steady trickle down because nobody wants to do this. I blame the parents. It's not the young person's fault. You take a young person at that age and you put them in that environment and they want it so bad. Why? Because it's innate. It's inside of them. They desire this, but society is keeping it from them. Just be comfortable. Hey, let's take a night off. Let's rest. Or you have a super aggressive parent. Hey, you need to go to more soccer practice. You have to go be at that camp and that tournament because there might be college coaches there. And if there are college coaches there, you're going to get that proverbial illusory college scholarship at age 9, which is what's happening. So you have the fanaticism clear on the other side, early specialization, never part of the program. So as we know as adults, if you skip steps in your life, things don't go as you desire them. Right? And so for our young people, we're skipping over some very, very vital steps. And as a result, we're ending up with record suicidal rates in this phase of their life in their 20s and 30s where they should be pretty dominant. They should be eager to go through life, starting families, running businesses, being coaches themselves, giving back to the sports that propelled them to where they were. It's just not happening. Okay, it's not happening. So we got this conundrum of things. So being an action-oriented person that I am, okay, we got to do something about this. So a few years ago, we made a concerted change to kind of get away from the specialization of sport performance training and become a little bit more generalized. So now what we do is a bit of a hybrid from bringing physical education and just basic knowledge and understanding of health into a young person's life, number one. Number two, and especially for the guys, my mission is to get these young people, by the time they're 12 to 13, eager and excited to choose the dangerous, narrow path along the side of the cliff where everything is riding in a life and death situation. I want them to go down that. And we know that from Scripture, right? Broad is the gate. That's easy. The opposite of courage is conformity. It's easy for me to just be a sheep among sheep. I'm in the warrior breeding business at age 8 because that's when we have to start it now. Or take a cue from the Spartans. They started at age 7. You get pulled away from your parents, and now you're in the academy. You're going to be in the go-get. You're going to be trained to be a warrior. So that's what we're doing about it. It's difficult to do because it requires parental cooperation. Get these young men, get these young ladies away from their parents, and let them go. And that becomes a possibility. That becomes a possibility. Okay? I'm going to stop there. Any questions on that? Any questions on this? Some of you may have gone through that, lived through this era where that's what PE programs looked like, and it was actually a foundational part, formative part of our lives. I look back at with fondness at my PE teachers, and we had tough PE classes. It wasn't what it is now, which is just go run laps. It's too hard. Just go run. That's all they made. Just go run. Or let's teach you how to play dodgeball or volleyball. It's kid. That's not physical education.
Well, there are a fair amount of parents in the room or grandparents. I just, my experience is watching schools cut back on the arts and cut back on physical health outside of if you're in sports. If you're on the football team, if you're going to be on the baseball team, there's some resources on that, Jason.
Yep. Oh yeah.
But I don't see the communal intensity. And for me, I've always assumed it was around budget. Is that right, or is it? You think it's a bigger? Well, I'm hearing you say it's a bigger issue than that.
No, I think it's a bigger issue of desire. I mean, I think it boils down to a lack of vision and a lack of purpose. So these young people are not instilled with some inspiration, or I like the word ignition. So if I'm around people that I'm attracted to because of who they are and what they do and what they're aspiring to achieve in life, I personally can be ignited in my passions to pursue and follow that person. Right, which is why it's really important to surround our young people with those types of adults. So for me, our pastor who just moved to the Pentagon is a Navy chaplain. I was invited to teach a course on raising boys to become men, using this book as my curriculum, Raising a Modern Day Knight, to the Special Operations community up in Camp Pendleton, up in Marsoc. These are guys who are some of the most elite specialists in the world, who go on long deployments and they leave their families at home, and they're struggling with how do I teach my son how to become a man? I was a derelict in high school, and then I became a world-class athlete and trained killer, but I got a big gaping hole. It was a great privilege. So I started getting my sons around these other men who share my faith, who share my convictions, share my value system. And so if you go into my 17-year-old son's room, the only poster on the wall is a Marine Corps poster. He'll play college sports, but then there's the Marine Corps. I want to go in the Marines. I want to be a recon sniper. Like, okay. Well, a lot of that came from surrounding him with other men who said, no, this is the life. You want to jump out of planes and take care of the bad guy and get shot at and run away, you travel the world. Yeah, let's do that. That's a very unpopular message. Like, how are we going to defend our country when we don't have guys like that anymore? How do we think this is going to happen when we have 16, 17-year-old still boys who come into a sport performance world because they are pretty good on their sport team who can't do one pull-up? It's a problem. It's a real problem. So one of the things that I've learned and discovered in my life, the passion for training, is the fortification of the mind, my heart, and my soul when I go through a little bit of suffering every day. Again, also a hard message, right? Warriors aren't trained in a life of luxury and lethargy and laziness. Training has to be hard. You're going to be crafted and molded into a warrior. And again, it's not. This is not directed solely at men. This is. We'll talk about this from a mom standpoint here in a second. But that it has to be woven into the fabric of our life. This is, again, we have to take action upon this. So for me, I start my day doing really hard things that I don't want to do, because it sets the stage for me being able to work long days with very little time to eat. But my training is non-negotiable. In the middle of the day, you're going to see me in the training center, squatting a lot of weight, throwing a lot of weight around. And it's what's toughened me up. It's what's made me more resilient and, at the same time, more compassionate and empathetic to try and woo more people into that. Most of you, let's say most. Many of you probably don't know who Henry Rollins is. You raise your hand if you know who Henry Rollins is. Oh, you're a Black Flag fan? Okay, good. So Henry Rollins was a lead singer of a punk rock band back in the 80s and 90s. But he wrote a poem called Iron and the Soul. And I want to read a little excerpt from this because this provides some perspective. Learning about what you're made of is always time well spent, and I've found no better teacher. The iron, he's referring to the barbell in training, lifting weights, has taught me how to live. Life is capable of driving you out of your mind. The way it all comes down these days, it's some kind of miracle if you're not insane. People have become separated from their bodies, and they are no longer whole. I see them move from their offices to their cars and on to their suburban homes. They stress out constantly, they lose sleep, they eat badly, and they behave badly. Their egos run wild. They become motivated by that which will eventually give them a massive stroke. They need the iron mind. Through the years, I've combined meditation, action, and the iron into a single strength. I believe that when the body is strong, the mind thinks strong thoughts. Time spent away from the iron makes my mind degenerate. I wallow in a thick depression. My body shuts down my mind. The iron is the best antidepressant I have ever found. There is no better way to fight weakness than with strength. Once the mind and body have been awakened to their true potential, it's impossible to turn back. The iron never lies to you. You can walk outside and listen to all kinds of talk, get told that you're a god or a total bastard. The iron will always kick you the real deal. The iron is the great reference point, the all-knowing perspective giver, always there like a beacon in the pitch black. I have found the iron to be my greatest friend. It never freaks out on me, never runs. Friends may come and go, but 200 pounds is always 200 pounds. So returning a passion, if I can inspire and move and get young people, with the permission of their parents, to start to engage in a culture and in a tribe, because young men are going to be tribal, they're going to associate themselves with a gang of some sort, into this domain, where we're going to breed physical toughness, mental toughness, and, as he's talking on here, a vision for life. As John F. Kennedy said, physical strength begets mental, emotional, spiritual strength. This is essential to the fabric of our nation. When we get this, and we get these young men in this direction, they take off. And I've personally seen the transformation. When I really started in this business when Jackson was about 11 years old, and he's 17 now, of fusing all of these things together. Forget the sport performance stuff. That's so easy. Training somebody to move faster and jump higher, and that's the easy part. It's getting them to adopt and engage mentally, emotionally in all of this and make it a way of life that's the big challenge, because it requires reinforcement from parents. They go to school. School's not going to help them with this. And then back to your point about resources, it's not really it's not financially expensive. The schools don't provide much of this at all. Even football programs, which historically is kind of where all this stuff hung out, they're not doing a whole lot. It's very lazy, very loosey-goosey. Everybody's worried about being sued, and coaches don't get to coach anymore. Can't say harsh things to your kids. So there's no real respect between a player and their coach. It's very hard to find that anymore. A coach is just an extension of a teacher now. Whereas I played high school football, I played high school baseball. My coaches were tough as nails. They didn't let us get away with anything. If they wanted us there at 5:30 in the morning, we were going to be there at 5:30 in the morning. You don't ask questions. And I look back with tremendous amount of respect and gratitude for those men being men. Well, you don't get it in the schools anymore. It's a big time struggle. One of the businesses that we provide is we test athletes. So we go to the schools, or we go to the sport club, and we run them through the 40, and we make them jump, and we do all this testing on them, and then we present the results back to the coaches. You got to figure, hey, this would be a great way to catalyze improvement in action, is to see that you're not very fast, you're not very strong, you don't jump very high. You might want to do something about that. And, oh, by the way, we can help you do something about that. And you look at this data, and you're like, I don't know how we're going to fix this. Because a lot of it is the intangibles outside of the field. The average teenager between the ages of 13 and 18 spends 6 hours a day on their phone outside of classroom time. So don't tell me, Mom and Dad, you don't have time for training. Okay, well, what does staying on your phone up until 11 o'clock do to your brain when it's time to shut down and go to sleep? It doesn't work very well, right? So they wake up tired the next day. They have no energy. They don't want to do this. So they'd rather just go to LA Fitness and pump some iron, or they'll go the whole vaping thing, and just, we're just going to be socialites. We got to provide something more inspiring and engaging for these men to do. Okay? Back to the hold up thing. This is a book. I had a couple recommendations. This is a book I would recommend everybody get and read. The Warrior Ethos. Written by Stephen Pressfield. He's a military historian, former Marine, wrote Gates of Fire. He's very fond of the Spartan culture. So this book, which is now your required reading as a freshman at the Naval Academy, when you come in, this is the first book that you're going to get and be asked to read. It's an easy book to read. Some of these chapters, so that chapter right there is a page and a half. Some of them are 1 page, 3 paragraphs. So I use this as a teaching curriculum to our young athletes because there really is no excuse for not being able to read a book this short. But as you can see, my copy, it gets used quite a bit. One of the things I love about this, because often I'll get pushback. Oh, you're being too tough. You're too harsh. You're too intense. We can't do this. But the first chapter of this book is called Tough Mothers. And he says, in order for this stuff to work, mom in particular has to detach from the son, from the boy. I'm going to read a little excerpt here. One scene in my book, Gates of Fire, has elicited more passionate feedback than any other. It's the one where the Spartan king Leonidas explains what criteria he employed to select the specific 300 warriors that he chose to march off with him and die defending the pass at Thermopylae. Leonidas picked the men he did, he explains, not for their warrior prowess as individuals or collectively. He could as easily have selected 300 others or 20 groups of 300 others, and they all would have fought bravely and to the death. That was what Spartans were raised to do. Such an act was the apex to them of warrior honor. But the king didn't pick his 300 champions for that quality. He picked them instead, he says, for the courage of their women. He chose those specific warriors for the strength of their wives and mothers to bear up under their loss. Leonidas knew what to defend Thermopylae was certain, that to defend was certain death. No force could stand against the overwhelming numbers of the Persian invaders. Leonidas also knew that ultimate victory would be brought about, if indeed it could be brought about, in subsequent battles, fought not by this initial band of defenders, but by the united armies of the Greek city-states in the coming months and years. What would inspire these later warriors? What would steel their will to resist and prevent them from offering the tokens of surrender that the Persian king Xerxes demanded of them? Leonidas knew that the 300 Spartans would die. The bigger question was, how would Sparta react to their deaths? If Sparta fell apart, all of Greece would collapse with her. But who would the Spartans themselves look to in that decisive hour? They would look to the women, to the wives and the mothers of the fallen. These women gave way, and if they fell to weeping and despair, then all the women of Sparta would give way too. Sparta herself would buckle, and with her all of Greece. But the Spartan women didn't break, and they didn't give way. The year after Thermopylae, the Greek fleet and army threw back the Persian multitudes at Salami and Plataea. The West survived then in no small measure because of her women. The lioness hunts. The alpha female defends the wolf pack. The warrior ethos is not, at bottom, a manifestation only of male aggression or of the masculine will to dominance. Its foundation is society-wide. It rests on the will and resolve of mothers and wives and daughters, and in no few instances of female warriors as well, to defend their children, their home soil, and the values of their culture. So it's the family unit. It's mom and dad both fulfilling their roles that helps facilitate what it is that we all would want to see, this grand vision. And frankly, this is just right out of Scripture. God designed us. He designed the home. He designed the family units. He designed society and culture to advance this. And when it's breached, we have problems. And that's where we're at right now. So enough of that. What do we do about it? Well, we got to take action. It starts with us personally. My personal mission is to be. We talk about be that change that you want others to make. I'm going to be that man first in my life. And my primary responsibility in disciple making are my two sons. Right. So when we created our training center and our business, my selfish motivation was I wanted the ultimate place for my two sons to grow up in. And there's a term in NCAA sports called the Power Five. Power Five schools are these schools, the Kentuckys, the Dukes, the Universities of Washington, that have all of their programs dominating in every sport. Well, I have my own Power Five rankings, my own Power Five motivation for what I aspire our young athletes, particularly my two sons, to become by the time they turn 18, graduate from high school, and move off. And that is, first of all, I want character well-formed. Integrity and character, super important to me. Number two, their work ethic. I want our athletes, and I want my sons to outwork everybody, or at least have that mental disposition. Third is self-discipline. I'm tired of telling them what to do. I want to cultivate their ability to do the right thing, to make sacrifices, to say no to things that aren't necessarily bad things, they're just not the great things. I want them to say yes to great things, so they gotta have discipline to say no to good things. Fourth is physical strength. I want to graduate out of my home two strong men. That's very important to me. And not to brag on my son, so Jackson's 17, will squat 400 pounds. He can power clean off the floor, 250, probably do 25 pull-ups. And that didn't just happen overnight. It happened because we started at age 10, and 11, and 12, and 13. And he's been in there 3-4 times a week, entire duration, eating meat, eating steak and chicken and fish, and not eating all the other garbage. He still does not have a cell phone. We still battle over that one, but he still does not have a cell phone. We don't have any video games in our home. You will not see video game consoles in our homes anywhere. He sleeps really hard at night, and he comes up in the morning with a lot of energy. Okay, and the last one is mental fortitude. I don't want my sons, and I don't want anybody else's son or daughter that I have the ability to influence to be anywhere near those statistics by the time they go to college and beyond. We're going to send them into the world ready to lead, ready to fight for the truth, stand for the truth, to be bold in their convictions for who they are, but be great lovers of society. Because ultimately, the great virtue of being a warrior is selflessness. It's love. Right? It's the act of self-sacrifice. That's the heartbeat of all of this. That is the gospel. Right? So for me, all of this goes full circle right back to the gospel. You want to be a warrior? You got to be a Christian. You got to follow in the footsteps of Christ, who paid the ultimate price. And if we have, as it says in Galatians 2:20, been crucified to Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives through me, you can't kill a dead man. So there's not a whole lot you can do to me to hurt my feelings, get me off my game. It doesn't really matter, because I'm already dead. I'm alive to Christ. I've been crucified. And so for that, the rest of my life gets ordered around that. I get up in the morning, that first thing I do is I jump in really cold water. Teddy Roosevelt would swim in the Potomac naked throughout his entire presidency. He'd get up early in the morning, jump in that cold water. Didn't matter what time or day of the year it was. So that's something I've adopted, and it's become one of the most important things that I do every morning without fail, including this morning. I could see the breath coming off the water. The way I eat. The way I eat takes on a completely different life. When I eat, sometimes I don't eat. I love to fast. I love to go a day, maybe a couple days without food. I feel better. I have more energy. And it toughens me up. I train all the time. Take a couple days off to let my body recover. But I plan to live another 100 years. So I'm doing things today. I'm making deposits today in my life from a health and fitness standpoint to be around a long time, so I can keep doing what I believe God's called me to do. I go to sleep at about 9:45 at night. I get up at 4:59 in the morning. The first couple hours of my day is spent in the Word. When I open up my Book of Common Prayer, there's a picture of my two boys right there, 11 years ago. That is my motivating factor for why I'm up at 5 o'clock in cold water in the Word before anything else happens. That morning routine, these daily disciplines set the stage to win that day. Because it's not just for my sake. It's for the sake of these young men, young women, the people that I have an opportunity to influence. That's what God's called me to be. So it's the action. It's doing something about it and sweating the small things. The small things turn into the big things. So if we do the little things well on a day-in-a-day basis, the big things will take care of themselves. We don't worry about the outcomes because we can't skip steps.
So Jason, thank you. You started by saying we all might need to forgive each other by the end of this, which is awesome, because I need, this congregation knows very well, I need them to forgive me constantly. I wanted to just ask, so what about what Jason said has made you feel uncomfortable? And if something has made you feel uncomfortable, Allison and I are here. I trust Jason. He's an awesome guy. Can we feel safe enough? Can we feel safe enough to talk about it, to say it? Because there was some pretty firm stuff in there. I haven't been in the context of warrior language in a long time, notwithstanding knowing Jason and his sons and his wife. And so, that, for me, that's like, wait a minute, I never saw myself as a warrior. Warrior for Christ, yes, but I never saw myself as a warrior. How about you all? What's feeling comfortable? What's feeling uncomfortable? Because I think that's where the formation of this dialogue is. Is what's fitting. I mean, I got a retired captain over here. Somebody tells me, there's something about some of this language. How about you? Yeah, go ahead.
So I have two sons. How do you balance raising a son in a warrior ethos and not becoming someone who bears this toxic masculinity?
I mean, it's a good question. To the toxic masculinity thing, I mean, we could go off on a tangent on that. I think it's a bit of a joke. It's a misunderstanding of what being masculine is to begin with,
Agreed.
right? So, as I said a minute ago, love is at the heartbeat of all this, right? So my biological mandate is to protect. So I've got to protect my wife, my sons, my community, my culture. And that may require some vigilance and some toughness when I fight. I've started taking up jujitsu because I want some better self-defense skills. I want to be a crafted fighter in the event that I need to do this. So, I think it's their environment, right? It's what they're surrounded by. They're byproducts of their environment, and so it's understanding, like the Navy SEALs that we spend time with. Okay, so these are trained elite killers. We go to church with some of them. You wouldn't know that if you didn't know that that's what. These are some of the funnest, laid-back, easy-going guys. They know they can get the job done, which takes the pressure off the rest of their life. They don't walk around with this aggression attitude. They're very kind. You see them hold their daughters and the way they care for other people. There's an element of justice and understanding context for why we are like that. And I think it goes back also to what we said earlier, which is vision and purpose. I'm going to leave you with a handout exercise that we take our athletes and their parents through at an early age, which is understanding what direction you're headed, and we can work backwards from there. So you got to have a context. You got to have a framework for that. I think it is difficult. Like for me, I have a hard time turning off. Right. So I am intense, but I live with a lot of urgency, and it's born out of love. It's born out of being a coach and caring so much about the people that I'm entrusted to work with. Toxic masculinity is the degrading of other people. It's the beatdown of other people. It's ego. It's not selflessness. It's not team. It's not honor and valor. And it's not those that serve in the military, they don't like attention being put upon themselves. So I think a lot of the toxic thing is more, look at me. Look at all my tattoos. Look at my beard. I look like a man. Well, but you're just a boy. You're acting like an idiot. And just because you do that and you go to CrossFit doesn't make you a man. So I think it depends. But a lot of it is character, right? It's character formation. I don't use my strength every day, but I have it if I need to use it. I would say too, back to, which I was in here, I had to talk about, the battle we fight right now, and ultimately the physical elements provide the resources for that, it's spiritual battle. The forces of darkness that are assaulting our young people are ferocious. And Satan, he's a deceptive liar, obviously, right? So I went to a lecture the other night on vaping. If I took this little USB key out right here and held it up to you, did you know that would look exactly like what the e-cigarettes look like now?
Yes, it's crazy.
It's crazy, right? And everybody's doing it. It's cool. It's hip. But they're not shown another way. Not many teenagers have jobs. We don't give them things to do. So what do? At the end of the day, they go home and they do what? More homework, and they just sit around, and they got time on their hands, so they pull up their phone and they just start watching dumb YouTube videos. They live their whole life in the present and the future. They have no framework or context for who they are and what they're there to do, and so they can get wooed. The desires and the appetites for those in those young boys and young ladies, it goes in the wrong direction. So we have to keep their environment framed and shaped in the right direction, I think, in order to avoid it from being toxic and a little bit extreme. It could be purpose. You gotta have purpose. Yeah.
Other comments? Kate?
Yeah, so most of this has been focused on raising boys or men.
Right.
And I have one of each gender. And I do sort of have a sense of a warrior woman as being one of confidence and strength and all the 5 principles that you said as well. But what type of work do you do with girls of this age?
It's a good question. I would say I struggle with that, but so a couple years ago I was a sport performance director at Point Loma Nazarene University. So we have Title IX. We have just as many, if not more, female athletes at the school than males. So my answer to that is that it's different. Right? The language, the rhetoric, the framing, what I communicate to a group of middle school boys is going to be a lot different than what you cultivate in a group of young female athletes. They are very encouraging of one another. They want to celebrate other success. They're way more relational and social in their interactions. Frankly, the young gals that train in our facility have a much greater work ethic. They're way tougher than the boys are. So we really don't have to. I don't have to speak to that directly. Some of the high school female athletes that we work with, they're the ones that are disciplined. I wish all of the guys that we train could see how disciplined they are in their lives, and they live with this sort of quiet, calm sense of direction and purpose. So I think they're being less assaulted, so there's less waning of the formation that's happening with them. I'm not as concerned about that. I think the encouragement I provide to young ladies or parents in this context as well is that we're raising men that you would want your daughters to marry. And we want your support and help with that, even if it just seems directed to that, because right now it's the area that needs the most help. But a stay-at-home mom is one of the toughest people I know. They're resolved to do the little things, the mundane things, day in and day out with all that acclamation and praise. That is the warrior ethos. Watching my wife go through childbirth, toughest person on the planet. Kidding me? So I think it's easier. It's different. In the context of sports, it's also different. Female sports can get a little out of hand, and frankly, I don't spend a whole lot of time at the upper levels anymore with the intense college female athlete, because some of their identities go off in the wrong direction, and then there's not a lot of future for women's professional sports. So all of a sudden your career ends, and now you also don't have a toolbox of things that you can take into the rest of your life. But it's just not as much of a risk factor. But we speak to them, same way. Or the disciplines to eat well and train hard and do those things because they aspire to achieve something. The last thing I would say is that if anything, we have to deal with the body image issue. And what we find with younger athletes, female athletes, is they just don't eat because they're worried about what they're going to look like. And so we try to provide the encouragement, like if you're eating the right things and you're training the right way, you don't worry about that stuff. You're going to be lean and strong and athletic, and that's why you're here to work with us, because you want to run fast, jump high, compete well. But that's the one risky issue that we come up with and we then get them to eat more, and they feel better, and they're stronger, and everything works itself out.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 minutes. Other thoughts or comments, or just feeling whether you're uncomfortable, whether it's something that Jason said he was going to offend some people. Did you get offended? Yeah, just or where you're at, or affirming, or just what's percolating in your heart and mind.
Mine would, okay, please.
Well, yeah, we'll go there and we'll go there. Go ahead.
What's a turnaround story? Joey showed up this way, turned out this way.
I would say there's a student. I don't know if I have his permission to share this, but there's a student who came to us actually through St. Michael's School. This one recently. He was 12, about to turn 13, had started going through puberty, put on a bunch of weight, was a little on the heavier side, glasses, musician, not playing sports anymore, social awkwardness, and his dad brought him into us and said, hey, look, his dad's very physically fit, very disciplined in this area of life, but he said, okay, I need some help. If I could show you the before and after pictures of this young man who just turned 13, the photos that his mom took on his 13th birthday, his cake had barbells and things on it, because for the first time he loves this, and he's completely come alive. And this is like 4 months, 5 months. This isn't like years and years and years. I have a group of men that train with me in the middle of the day, and one of the gentlemen in there has had 2 hip replacements, was weighing 260 pounds, dealing with a bunch of post-medication issues from having lupus, and he's 215, throwing up a lot of weight, moving well, starting new businesses, super healthy. I mean, it's just, it works. It's not, that's not the hard part. The hard part is the time and the commitment and the engagement in that. And then I have a couple, some of my favorite ones are 10, 11-year-old, he's same age as Jackson now, 17. He started with us when he was 10, would throw a fit, cry, kick and scream, mad at his dad, parents going through a divorce. His dad was kind of using it as an outlet for him to make him do tough stuff, and just to see what that young man has turned into, because it's kind of like our place became the Boys and Girls Club. It was just after school, he was just going to come hang out at our place because it was a place where we were going to reinforce his desire for his own life and becoming a man and kind of get away from his parents and sports and all that, and just to see what he's become and what he aspires to be. Those are the things that are important to me. And I could give you umpteen different examples and stories, and kind of goes on and on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Great. Just a quick, yeah, go ahead. You good? You're good. So, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Your family. Yeah, come hang out with us, and you'll hear how we talk about many of these topics in our worship.
Awesome.
The banner up front is all open to exceptions, and our challenge to live into that. And that goes back to our spiritual health, our physical health, and how we participate in our families and our community. Here at St. Bart's, we try to pride ourselves in what it takes a village. And so this is part of that conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, onward.